Good morning, everybody. My name is John Wee. Just call me John for short. I will be your trainer and facilitator for this morning session. I do have our principal support here today joining us. His name is Mahu. He will be doing some of the demonstration of the system itself. So for today's topic, we would like to take you on a short journey, a very selected topic on the IT Service Management Fundamental using SymphonyAI Summit, which is one of our principals product that we carry in Cybin here. And later on, like I mentioned, we will get Mahu to demonstrate some of the features of the software aligned to IT service management. Yeah. Okay. Right. So here are the agenda for today. So we will have 3 specific topics that we would like to take you through. So for those of you who are not familiar with ITSM or IT Service Management per se, we would like to introduce today the topic of incident management. Actually, that is one of the most core topic of IT service management itself. And second of all, we will also would like to go through a little bit on request management. How is request management being handled in an IT service management practice itself? And lastly, we will talk a little bit more on the SLA management and reporting. Okay, and then lastly, we will conclude and summarize the whole thing. Now, before we get started, let me introduce ourselves here again. My name is John again, so that's our principal, Mahu. He's actually from SymphonyAI. He is our APJ pre-sales lead, who is actually supporting us for this training program for all of you. All right. Now, before we get started, I want to highlight that there is a Q&A button at the top. We will appreciate if everybody can just write down your question in the Q&A, or even we will have that session at the end of the session. We will allocate sufficient time to answer all of your questions. So that's why I asked earlier, please have your paper or a pen ready to write down the questions, and hopefully if you can put that into the Q&A. And at the end of the session, both myself and Mahu will do our very best to address some of those questions that you may have. All right. Hope everybody can actually help us with that. Right, let's get started. So allow me to do a quick overview or introduction of Cybin. Who are we? We are a company that focuses on what we call helping organizations and people to acquire the necessary knowledge and whatnot to win in the digital economy. That is actually our tagline. So we are focusing on a little bit of consulting work, a little bit of education or certification work to help you to acquire the necessary knowledge and know-how in applying in your daily work itself. We're headquarters in Kuala Lumpur here. We do have offices in Singapore, in Netherlands, as well as in the US itself. So we have 4 offices around the globe, okay? But headquarters here in Malaysia. Now, just to also touch on a little bit on this thing called the Service Automation Framework. This was actually developed by our founder and managing director, Jan Willem. He actually released this back in 2016, 2017. It is now actually being adopted as a best practice in the industry. So those of you who are interested to know a little bit more about Service Automation Framework, do drop me a quick email. We'll be happy to share a little bit more, right? Now, the things that we do, like I mentioned, we are focusing on these key areas. One is the consulting services, which I'm actually taking a lead, and also the education service, which is helping people to acquire the necessary knowledge and certification in order to apply in your day-to-day job. We also do a fair bit of technology implementation. So we work with companies like SymphonyAI to help them to implement their solution, which is an ITSM solution. So today we are very fortunate, like I said, we have Mahu here who will be actually helping us to have a look at some of the key features that we talk about in ITSM, how that is actually relevant, how that is actually going to be applied from a SymphonyAI perspective, right? And we also have an IT professional platform and team to support organizations who wishes to do outsourcing or require what we call a short-term or a long-term support in that sense. Okay. Now, if you come to our website, do know that we actually have a lot of knowledge-based articles. I encourage you to visit the website, which is the link shown at the bottom of the slides there, www.cybin.com. we do have, like I said, a whole range of knowledge articles that you might want to search to look at them, which may be applicable in your specific area. Again, if you do not find anything that you would like to see on that page, do drop us an email. We'll be happy to respond to you as well. At the same time, we also have white papers that are released regularly. This is actually to help people who wants to really have a quick overview, understanding what those topics are, specifically to help you to really get started in that sense. All right, so enough about Cybin. Let's quickly get started. Right, ITSM process, what we call a deep dive. So we'll go into a little bit more detail in that sense, okay? So let's get started. So first and foremost, what is service management? So if you look at the slides there, we have actually given an ITIL definition. It says that service management is a set of specialized organization capabilities. So it's actually talking about a specific organization, which is your organization itself, which enable what we call value to the customer in the form of service. So nowadays, right, when we actually serve a customer, we are actually trying to provide a value in that sense. Okay. Now, when we provide a value to our customer, please note that as a service provider, that means we are the one doing the service, right? Trying to serve our customer. There are actually three things that you would need to balance or try and stay focused on. The first thing is, of course, cost, because resource does cost money. We will need to actually factor in the cost of the manpower, the tools, and all the technology that we apply to deliver that service. That's the first area. The second area is the speed. How fast can we actually serve the customer, right? Does it take 1 day? Does it take an hour? Does it take 5 minutes to actually enable the customer to get what they want in the form of value from our service? Now, thirdly, is a very important pillar or area. It's actually called quality. We need to deliver things in a good quality, right? So when you go and ask or request for a service, you expect the service provider to actually take the request properly to deliver what you have asked for. So the quality aspect has to be on the dot. So allow me to repeat again: cost, speed, and quality. These are the three areas that we need to focus on as a service provider, or as we manage the service, as we deliver that to our customer. Now, so those of you who are actually in an organization, you're probably thinking, hang on, John, I don't serve our external customers. So what do you mean by that? Actually, what we're referring to, customers are also within your organization, which we define as end user. Does that make sense? So it's actually the end users that we are also serving in that perspective. So they are also our customer. So when you serve them, when you perform a service of sort, you need to take into consideration the cost, speed, and quality. One of my ex-bosses used to tell me, John, can we focus on cheap, fast, and good? So I was like, what do you mean, boss? He said, well, that's actually the cost, the speed, and the quality as well. So another way to look at it, cheap, fast, and good. But as we know, this is actually quite a tricky way, should I say, to strike a balance here. So we will talk a little bit more on that later. Next, so which I mentioned earlier, this actually came from ITIL. So where does ITIL fit in? So ITIL, it's an IT technical library that was developed by the British government many years ago. I will show you in the next slides. Actually, if you look at what it is, it actually provides what we call guidance. They provide advisory as to how we need to manage a service management, utilizing the technologies that we have in the IT world. Okay, so it's actually providing guidance. As you can see from the slides, I've highlighted the keyword there, guidance. So anything that people ask you, say, hey, what is ITIL? ITIL basically provide a guidance to organization on how you should run or operate or manage a service management per se. Okay, right. So when did ITIL come into play? So just to get you started, this is actually a little bit of history. If you look back in time, ITIL actually started back in 1989. That was the first set of standards that was delivered, that was also compiled together. In 2001, they have the service delivery and support element added in. Then in 2007, we had the ITIL service lifecycle being developed and incorporated into the framework itself. Then we aligned to the business needs in 2011. So today itself, we have ITIL 4. This is the current version. We call it the ITIL 4. That is actually being propagated and being adopted by a lot of organizations worldwide. They actually incorporate this thing called the service value system. This is around the time of 2017, 2018 kind of thing. So you look at it, it's pretty old, the standard, as it has been updated over the time as we progress. And this is the one that we are using at this point in time. A lot of time when we talk about ITIL, sometimes I get questions like, okay, when is version 5 coming up at this point in time? Unfortunately, I don't have any idea at this point in time. I think there's been in development at this point in time. As soon as we are aware of that, we would know. But currently, ITIL 4, it is still applicable, adopted, and being used by a lot of organizations out there. Okay, so let's get into the core of what ITIL 4 talks about. So ITIL 4 talks about this thing called the service value system. So what is a service value system? So let me take you through this slide. It looks a little bit complicated, but it actually is not. So if you look at on the left-hand side itself, we have this thing called the opportunity or demand. That means people requesting for service from us, right? So that's the left-hand side. Now, on the right-hand side, as we go through the central piece, we need to provide a value to our customer or end user that they have requested for it. So if you look at it, you start from the left-hand side, you move through it and come out from the other side, which is the right hand, to provide value to your customer. So in the middle, the core there, we have this called the service value chain. These are the processes. These are the things that we do as a service provider that we deliver to our customer or end user. So we call that the service value chain, the processes that we put in place in order for us to deliver that service. Now, as you can see, there are 4 items that wrap around the service value chain. You have governance, which is very important in every organization. You have practices, which there are 34 of them in ITIL. That means 34 individual ways of doing service management. And you also have this thing called the 7 guiding principle. And more importantly, there is one thing called the continuous improvement. So these 4 things wraps around the service value chain require the organization or the individual, when you look at ITIL or adopt ITIL way of doing things, to be very focused on delivering value, which is coming out from the right-hand side, to give and to deliver to our customer and end user. Okay, so this is actually the core of ITIL 4 itself. Okay, next, what does ITIL offer? So if you go to the internet, if you go to the ITIL portal, you will realize that they actually provide a updated body of knowledge. Basically, these are the best practices. They will have articles, they will have things. Sorry, they will have things and whatnot. I think there was a bit of a feedback. Somebody, I'm sorry. Let me just, yeah, thank you. Sorry for that. There was a bit of feedback early on. Right, so this is what ITIL provides. So they also provide what we call the templates, the tools, the best practices. They have discussion, they have white papers and whatnot. And of course, they have the certification program itself, right? So this is what ITIL is all about in that sense. Right, so let's move on to the next slide. Sorry, where is my, hang on, here we are. Sorry, there was an interruption. Okay, so now the thing that I want to focus on today is actually to bring your attention to the practices, because like I mentioned earlier when we start the training program, is that we want to actually showcase or actually take you through 3 key areas of the practices in ITIL, which is what we call in the next slide, which is how we organize ourselves to actually deliver that value. Yeah. So what are the 3 practices that we will be highlighting to you today? So we will look at the the 3 practices that I will talk about is actually the incident management, the service level, as well as the service request. So out of the 34, that is actually the whole lot of it. Now, when we look at an organization, right, we typically look at it not just from an operation back-end point of view, we also need to consider the front office operation. So this is actually a very high-level architectural diagram explaining what are the front offices operations look like and what are the back-end offices looks like. And in between, there should be what we call the ICT or the IT functional area that we need to integrate between the front and the back office itself. Okay, so I just want to bring this up so that you know the complexity of the systems that we need to deal with in the current organization. Now, very quickly, let's jump into the incident management. So what is the purpose of incident management? So the purpose of the incident management, as you can see from the slides there, we are to minimize the negative impact of incident by restoring the normal service operation as quickly as possible. That's why we have incident management. Now, of course, when we have an incident, as you can see, we need to make sure that we actually log and manage the incident itself. We need to document it and we need to prioritize it, because if we have a lot of incidents, we need to look at, okay, which one should we be focusing on to help our customer, to help our users to restore them or to minimize the impact as quickly as possible. Okay, so these are the three things that we need to do. Now, very quickly, the purpose is actually to ensure that we follow a standardized way of doing things. We have a proper, what we call documentation, proper log that is auditable, that is also visible to the other functional team as well. Okay, so I'm going to just briefly just run that through. And here are the what we call terminologies that we need to be aware of when you do incident management. So when we do incident management, you must agree on what is an incident. How do we do incident prioritization? How do we prioritize it? How do we even categorize it? What kind of incident is this, right? And we also need to look at hierarchical escalation. When do we escalate to level 2? When do level 2 escalate to level 3, which is your principal support? And as well as if there is a functional escalation, is this a specific functional area that we need to escalate? And we also need to look at the definition of what is a major incident, which will impact perhaps at least a large portion of your organization. Typically, it is at least 50% of your organization, or maybe more, in that sense that you declare it as a major incident. Okay, and how do we close it, and who owns that incident in that sense? All right, so these are just some of the definition. I'm just going to quickly run through that. Right, and of course, the business value of a incident management is that we want to reduce, right, our labor costs, because we want to standardize the way that we do things. We want to service the end user properly. We want to align to what the key business activities or practices are. Those are very, very important. And we also need to look at how could we improve it, okay? And the other services that we could perhaps bring online per se. Now, if you look at the right-hand side, there is a whole list of applicable policies. So these are the things that are related to incident management that we need to ensure that we actually put in place. So things, how do we communicate? When do we communicate? What are the satisfaction survey or tracking that we need to do? How do we manage and present the information? How do we ensure we have auditable accounts and a standardized format in that sense? So there's a whole list of stuff that we need to establish first. And typically, we would need to make sure that you have some sort like a what we call a RASI table, a responsible, accountable, consult, and inform kind of a table, as in who is going to do what. So this is actually very, very typical in any IT service management process itself. Okay. Now, of course, having those done, you would need to make sure you have properly designed the process that is complying to ITIL in that sense, to make sure that when you actually run the process, there is a SOP, standard operating procedure per se, that people can actually refer to. Okay. Right, so that was a very, very brief, quick run through of what incident management is all about. I'm going to now pass over to Mahu, our principal here, to demonstrate a little bit of what does it look like in SymphonyAI when you actually run incident management. Mahu, you are here?
Hey, John. Hi. Yes.
All right. I'm going to pass it over to you for you to share your
Yeah.
slides and then to take us
I'm
through
going
on
to.
incident management.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I have shared my screen. I hope it's visible. John, can you confirm?
Yes, it is. Very good. Well done. All right. Over to you, Mahu.
All right. Thanks, John. So, hi everyone. Good morning. I believe you have seen the slides and the details shared by John earlier on ITSM, the basic fundamentals and the processes on the processes of ITSM, and incident management is one of the processes that falls under that segment. Now we are going to show you how that incident management works on the tool. We have seen theoretically from John how the processes looks like, what's the flow, what are the key terminologies. Now, how are they implemented and how are they used in the tool is what we are going to see from here. Now, I'm just logged into one of my demo instances, and this is the landing page for all the users. So it's totally configurable in nature. You can design it as per the requirements of the organizations. And as a user, as an end user, for example, you're working in the company as an as an employee, and you're facing some issues. There's some interruption in your existing services. That's where the incident management comes into picture, and you will be logging into the application to go ahead and log the concern that you have, the issues that you have, and for that, the incident management process is what is going to be followed. Now here, there's a smart search. So as a user, you can start typing in the problem that you're facing based on the keyword. It's going to give you some related knowledge articles. So probably you can give it a try on how to handle it. But in focusing on incident management, you can have multiple templates created in the system, and probably you can just choose one of the templates and take it forward from there. Now, as an incident logging process, there are multiple ways to log it. Now, either my organization has configured the templates for me, which I can choose, and it will redirect me to the respective page of logging incident with all the details pre-filled into it, which I will be using to give some additional information, if any, and then I can go ahead and submit it to submit the ticket, to submit the incident. Now here, this forms can be entirely configurable again based on the needs, how and what all details we want to capture from the employee when he or her are facing some problems. They want to log the incident, and that's where the this process will come of logging incident will come into picture. Now, when I click on submit, it's going to log the ticket, and the ticket will be logged, which will be shared with the respective analyst, the service desk team. Now, there are different ways, different channels as well that are used to handle these incident management processes. From the user perspective, it can be done through the web portal, as I'm showcasing here, or it can be done through email to ticket functionality. It can be done using the mobile apps that we have, right? So different channels available, WhatsApp. So you just do the respective chatting, and you can take it forward from there. Now, secondly, if I'm as a user, I'm facing a concern that, okay, this is one way I'm doing it as a traditional way by clicking on submit an incident, or I follow the template that has been created for me. I can use these options and go ahead with the configuration. We go ahead with the incident process. However, there are different ways, as I mentioned, there are different channels available, and we also have our AI enabled digital agent. We call her Cindy, and she'll be there to give you all the necessary support as a user, be available 24/7 for all the necessary FAQs or the details that you're looking at, or to give you all the assistance required while logging a request or the incident. Now, focusing on incident, I have done for a sample conversation here, like Hi, my VPN is not working. Now, based on this, Cindy, leveraging the AI technology and NLP technologies, natural language processing, it's going to understand the sentiment, the user intention, and based on that, initiate the right dialogue flow with them. So, in case it says that, okay, hey, my issue, I'm facing this problem, this is not working, or that particular service is not working, which means that it's an interruption in the existing service, and therefore it is an incident management process that should be followed on that. Now, based on that, it will initiate the incident management flow in the backend and start the right set of dialogue flow with the user to capture the information needed and also provide the resolutions wherever possible based on the articles or the self-service articles published for the users to use. Now, over here in the example shown, I did a conversation that, hey, my VPN is not working. And based on that, I got some recommended solution with the embedded video. So I can probably follow that, try to resolve things myself. If this helps me, or it is, as a user, I do not want to use it, I can go ahead and choose to log an incident, wherein again, I will be given the options to select one of the templates if created, or I can give additional description on the issue that I'm facing. And based on that, if there is any attachment, I will do that and I can take it forward to log an incident from here. Right? So as a user, I can just do my normal conversations here, like I'm chatting with my another peer in the organization. I will do similar conversation here with the AI-powered digital agent, and that agent is going to help me with all the necessary information and help me to log an incident on my behalf. Right? So here, this is a few of the ways of how to handle raising incidents from the user persona standpoint. Now, if I move to the analyst role, where once these incidents are logged, it goes to the service desk, and the service desk will be consisting of different set of people working in different teams. We call them work groups. So if I refer to that, they will have their own workspace available. We call it analyst dashboard. And based on different types of ticket, like we are currently focusing on incident management, but on the same dashboard, they can see the incident, they can see service request, change, problem, work order, which are distributed tasks under incidents. Now, here we can see as an analyst, as a technician at the working at the service desk, I can know I'm part of what all work groups, like I'm part of application support, or probably I'm part of server team, or I'm part of some critical app team, right? So these are different type of dashboards or different type of work groups, and based on that, these dashboards can be showing the filtered results to the respective analysts. Now here I can see how many open incidents are there with my work group, out of which how much are are VIP incidents, so I can take it forward accordingly. How many are assigned to me on which I need to work, and the same count that I see is further segregated status wise here, that out of this how many are assigned, new, in progress, or pending. All these numbers, bars are drill-in capable. I can click on any of the bars. I can click on the number to drill in further and get to the list of those many tickets. And the SLA performance, which we will touch upon as we move ahead in the session. Now here, if I just click on assign to me, it takes me to the list of those many incidents. Now, when I get the list of incidents, probably I'm just looking to fetch some other filtered results as well. So I can apply multiple filters over here. I click on add, and I can keep on adding multiple filter combinations. And based on this combination, I can even save it as a view. So the next time when I come back, I do not have to reapply the filters. I can simply select the view, and I will have the filter results in front of me on which I can quickly start working on it. Now, if I click on the hyperlink here for incident ID, I get the detailed view of that particular incident that has been logged by the user. And this is how it looks like. Now you have, if you refer to the the terms that John was using in the slides earlier. He mentioned about different prioritizations, urgency, impact, classification, major incident. So these are different processes, different functions within the incident management process. And this is how these respective things are captured over here. So under classification section, you can have different types of urgencies like high, medium, low, or critical. There could be different ways of handling the impact. What's the impact of this incident on the organization level? Is it medium, high, or low? And based on the matrix of the combination of urgency and impact, the priority can be derived. Now, this is one way of deriving the priority. Now, it can be done in multiple ways as well. Now, one is that I am looking at the urgency and impact combination. So based on what is the urgency and what is the impact, the priority will be derived. And that's configured in the system in the backend from the admin configuration standpoint. So the analyst need not to worry about which priority to be assigned. Now, once this is one way. Second is probably it's based on the user type. Someone from the higher senior management team is logging an incident, then it has to be treated on priority and it has to be P1. So that's one way. Or someone from sales team, someone from production line is logging it as a user type, then it has to be P1. So there would be different types of users that you can create and map the priority with them. Another way is, which is widely used, is based on the category. Now, there are different ways of doing the classification and doing the categorization for the respective incidents. Now, based on this, supposingly, it currently says the different categories of the incident. Something could be related to your application, some software, some network, or something to do with your data center or end user computing. The way it has been derived, the way it has been configured in the system, those categories is what we see over here. But if I say that if something is coming around server category, it has to be treated on priority 1. If something is coming on desktop or laptop, it could be P2 or P3 depending on the scenarios, and I can choose one of them to go ahead with. But it has something to do with data center categories. It has always to be treated on priority 1 or high priority. So that's how, based on priority, based on categories, these priorities can be auto mapped as well, right? So these are different ways of handling these priority mapping. Then if there is a major incident happen, something very critical, critically impacting the business or the organization. So there is a major incident management, which is another function process of major incident management under incident management. Now here, if there is a scenario like that, some major incident happened. So I will be putting a checkbox over here, clicking on that icon to go ahead with further detailings, wherein I can probably, do some integrations with your Microsoft Teams. So I can involve all the key stakeholders over here from the same screen. I do not have to switch to my Outlooks to do that. I can here define who all are the key people who should be joining this war room to discuss the major incident happened and what are the measures to be taken, and those things can be all documented over here. So I can invite everyone here. I can link it with Microsoft Teams. So the link of Microsoft Teams will be initiated in the same activity over here when I do this. What is the interval? Do we have to capture the meeting details and send the links to invitees, the people I'm configuring over here. And when I want to start it, I can start the conversation. I can start the conference from here. Now, this is all the detailings on major incident, how we can handle it better under incident. Then there is a concept of work groups, which are different teams, different engineers who are there, part of those teams. So we can assign it to the right team and the right engineer to work on it. And the respective SLAs that we are going to touch upon more in details as we proceed with this session today, with this workshop. So at that point in time, we'll touch these areas more in detail. right? But there are other areas related to incident management. So during the life cycle of your incident that has been logged as per ITIL. These are different stages, like it's in new, assigned, in progress, pending. Now, pending is like I have some dependency on some external vendors, or the user is himself or herself is not available right now. So I can probably put it under pending, and then I can put the pending reason. And this is again part of the configuration. So what all reasons you want to define here, that should be selectable by the engineers while working on the incident. So probably the user is not there, or it is under observation right now, or there is some vendor dependency. So there could be different ways, different reasons based on which you need to put it under pending stage. And once it's resolved, like you have got the solution, you have provided the solution, it moves to resolve stage. And when I move it to resolve, it comes to resolution. What solution has been provided to this incident that was reported? Now, while doing that, you can update all the detailings here that, okay, I did reset of the settings, reinstalled IIS on a particular server, right? And you can define what all things respectively have been done, what solution has been provided. And once done, you can select the closure code, whether it was successfully done or it was done with some temporary solution at the moment, or it has been auto closed, which will be selected by the system automatically in certain automation cases. And what is the closure category? Now, closure category, if it's same category at what it started from here, I can copy it from there by clicking on this icon, or I can choose a separate closure category, which I found to be the actual category while working on the solution on this incident, right? Now, assuming this is the life cycle, which goes from new to resolved and then closed. Now, during this entire life cycle, there could be different stages and in which there could be different, scenarios I have to use other functionalities under incident management. Now, there could be something around communication where you have to communicate something back to user. So you can have some responses configured here, like your mail body at least. So if you have to put something as a communication to the user, it will be going as a standard communication. So you just select the template and everything will be drafted automatically over here. You just have to click submit, and the history and the audit trail will be maintained by the system automatically. So who sent what email communications, any private logs maintained by the engineers for themselves, those things can be referred under communication tab. There could be different checklists that can be configured depending on what is the category that you're using. And based on that category, these checklists can be configured. What type of relationships you have. So relationship is something which is very important in any of the processes, wherein one incident could be related to some other incidents as well, right? So there could be scenarios where there is similar kind of incidents happening. So you create a parent-child relationship between them, or there are some other type of tickets, type of issues happening which are interconnected or interrelated. So that's where we will be needing the need of relating them under relationship tab, and you can link different type of records as well of service management. So there could be incident, there could be change, problem, right? Your service request, your assets, or the configuration item that you're maintaining in CMDB. So those things can be all linked under incident record, and you can see what things have been, like I can see child incidents are there. They're all in progress right now. There are 2 problem records. There is 1 change. If there is any service request, then I can see there's 1 service request also raised against this particular incident, which has been reported. During this entire thing, if in case there is a scenario, I need to take a remote desktop of the user, I can do it from here. I can see all the histories of the user, that how many times this user has logged incidents in past, what is the what are the assets that the user is using, right? What is the preferred method of notification that user has selected or opted for? Any chatting happened with this particular user, then what is the history of that? So all those things are there. Now there is another function leveraging the AI technology, whereas we can see the troubleshooting tab. Now it's like an operational intelligence given to the engineers, to the analysts, so they can know holistically what is happening around the organization in their environment. So they're not just working and focusing on one incident that they are working on, but they can have a holistic view that how other people are also facing the same problem probably. So what are similar open incidents? What are similar closed or resolved incidents? And this is also helpful for the people who have newly joined the team. So probably I want to refer to this to know what solution has to be provided or what was provided earlier by different engineers. So I can probably follow the same steps and I can provide the necessary solution over here. What are the related knowledge records, possible remediations? If there is some changing going on in the infrastructure which might be impacting this incident, so those things can be all tracked. So overall, this holistic information as an operational intelligence which is being provided to the user, to the analyst user, they will have a better understanding of their environment and provide a better solution. So they achieve their first call resolution as well, and highly a chance that the user is going to come back with the same problem if I'm providing a holistic view and then solution accordingly, right? There could be some vendors involved, so you can capture vendors, any other informations under SLA for OLA or diagnostic details. We'll touch upon the OLA as well as we move ahead in the session, and that 10 point talk more in detail on this, right? So this is the incident management, and you can have multiple other actions that you can take over here. Probably you need to transfer this incident from one department to another department if wrongly reported. Probably want to look at change history, who did what changes. So if any audit happens, you know exactly what is the history on this. You want to copy it, send an email from here, send up a reminder, or you want to look at the audit flow. So who did what? So what is the pictorial representation of the entire flow or the chronology of this ticket that can be seen under this? You want to convert it or you want to export it to a PDF and then share that PDF file with someone or take printout for some meetings. So you can take all these actions on top of incident management. Or there are some business rules that you can define in the system that based on certain conditions, you want certain actions to be done. That those things can be defined under business rule designers as well. Right. So that's a quick touch upon on the incident management, how it looks like, how it works, and different engineers, how they're going to see how the user is going to report it and how the engineers are going to look at it to take it forward and provide the necessary solution. Right. So I think that's about it from my side on incident management. Let me hand it over back to John.
Thanks, Mahu, for that very, very detailed explanation. By the way, I think we need to take a quick question while we're at this section. Reason being because I see Kushan has actually asked a very relevant question. I probably need your help. He's asking, can we extend our dashboard timeout? I think just now you quickly went through the systems, right? Talking about timeout on the dashboard, right? So he's asking, can we actually make sure that it extends a little bit in that sense? Can you probably talk a little bit more on that?
Yes, so that's basically part of the configuration within the application, that if in case you want to set up the idle timeout period, so no one is logged in all the time, and if they are not using it, they should be auto logged out. So it is for that purpose, and that's part of configuration. How standard timeline is 20 minutes for that, 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, I think that's quite sufficient, Kushan. I hope 20 minutes is quite a long time, like Mahu mentioned. So if you want for a specific profile to be extended, I think like Mahu mentioned, in SymphonyAI, they do allow you to configure that in that sense. So hopefully that answers your questions in that perspective. Right, so let's get back to the presentation itself. I'm re-sharing my screen. So Kushan, hope you got it. Yep, thank you for that question. Guys, we keep the question coming. If it is very specific to the section that we are talking about, I will try and get Mahu or myself to tackle that. If not, we will keep it at the end of the Q&A session, yeah? Right, let's continue with the sharing in that sense. Right, so the next area that we would like to introduce to you on the IT service management perspective is this thing called the service request. Now, again, service request is a little bit unique. It's slightly different from incident management where you have a problem, you start calling up. Now, when you talk about a service request management, this is what we call something that is predefined. That means you have to have an agreement with your user. It has to be a user-initiated kind of a request, right? So this is something that in most organizations, you do have what we call a kind of a service request per se, okay? So let's get into the details of what that is. So basically, when we have a service request, we are typically talking about a service action. For example, I'm going to say, okay, Mahu, could I please request to have access to the SharePoint folder, for example. Let's say, assuming Mahu is our administrator and he actually needs to grant the access rights for me to get into the SharePoint folder itself. So that is actually requesting for a service delivery action. Or I could perhaps ask for information to say that, hey, could you tell me how could I apply access to this? Can I have access to that? So you might want to request for me, how do I go about requesting for a new laptop, for example, right? So those are the information part. Or you could be requesting the provision of a resource. You could be requesting to the cloud team to say that, hey guys, we need to test our application. We're almost ready for deployment. But before we do, could you provision a test server for us or on the cloud, a test environment for us to test this so that we can actually get it right? So you can request for a provision of sort, or you can have access to a resource, perhaps a network engineer or an on-site engineer. You want to request to say that, can I request somebody to come to my workstation? I'm having problem with the configuration of the docking station or even the meeting room. Can't get the projector up and running. I need a little bit of help. So you need a resource in that. Or it could be a feedback that you want to give a compliment or a complaint of sort, right? So those are classified under what we call a service request in that sense. Next, so when we talk about a service request, right, it has to go through a couple of phases. Yeah, so if you can see from the screen in the arrow there, so somebody, especially a user perspective, they have to initiate that. Second of all, it has to go through an approval process. Now, the approval process here can be pre-approved or it needs to actually be approved in that sense. When I say pre-approved, there are situations whereby, let's say, if I am a new employee, a new staff joining the organization, and HR has confirmed, as well as my immediate supervisor have said that, yeah, John is actually joining on the 1st of September. We are requesting to let him have a new laptop when he comes to work on the 1st of September, for example. That has been pre-approved. So there is no approval required in that sense. So that was what I meant by pre-approved, but it still falls under the approval process. Or it could be that I'm need to request to have access to the learning management system because it requires a license fee. There is a cost. So my supervisor will need to approve that. Okay, so there has to be some sort of approval. Then it has to go through what we call a fulfillment process, whereby the resources actually, or should I say the team actually at the back end actually deliver that service, and we actually have to manage it. Okay, so this is a very, very, very simplistic view of service requests. We've gone through what they are and how they actually needs to be done. Later on, we will get Mahu to showcase a little bit how that is being done in the what we call the SymphonyAI system itself, how that could be very, very intuitively being done. Okay, so we'll get Mahu to show you that. Now, the next concept that we wanted to tie into service requests is this thing called optimize and automate. Now, in ITIL, one of the key principles that out of the 7, yeah, this is one of the one out of the 7, yeah, they talk about optimize and automate. Now, the reason for that in ITIL, they want us to really deliver value in a very fast, concise manner. So it says in this rule, or should I say the guiding principles here, says that you need to focus on optimizing the work that is being carried out by human or technical resources. Now, in order to do this, we need to automate as much as possible. So I'm going to take you on a quick example. What does that mean and how we can actually do it? Now, traditionally, when we do automation, right, if we assuming that we have a 10-step process, you will straight away translate that into the automation itself. Now, this is the traditional way of doing it. Again, this is not the best practice, yeah? Because you see, if you have a 10-step and you get the robot to actually do it for 10-step, yes, the robot can do it faster, but we are not optimizing it. We are just translating what we have as the as is and doing it in the robotic or an automated way, which is the 10-step. What we should do in this case is to simplify first, is to do a process improvement first. This is the part when we talk to a lot of people when they're doing automation, right? They kind of skip this step because they say, John, this is very tedious, it takes a bit of time, but actually this is necessary. Yeah? So you need to actually simplify first. So assuming, going back to the example, we have a 10-step process, we try and remove those that are unnecessary, shrink it down, optimize it to 6-step, for example. And once we've optimized and validate that is the to-be process, then we translate it into the automation itself. Now, this step is super, super critical. Like I said, you want to make sure that you streamline your process first, because if you just do a direct translation, a lift and shift, there is not much what we call optimization being done. Okay, yes, it takes a little bit of effort, but it's actually to the benefit of you and your team or even your organization if you actually optimize that. Now, one word of caution when you do the simplification process here, please do not remove governance process. If governance process says that, John, you actually have to document this, you need to have this, please do not remove those steps. Those are necessary. You look at those steps that doesn't value add, those steps that can be removed, that the customer doesn't need it or we don't need it as an organization. Those are the ones that you simplify and reduce the time. Okay, in that sense. So I just want to quickly highlight this because this is a very, very common thing that people tend to skip or ignore. They say, no, John, it's 10-step to it as is, and then we just translate. Normally, I will tell them, please don't do that. You really need to spend a little bit of time to investigate the as is, design the to-be into a more simplified, more efficient manner before we translate into the automation part. Okay. Now, as we manage the automation part itself, there is this guidance that we want to give. And first, these are the 6 steps that we want to actually do. Yeah? So I'll just take you through quickly. So for step 1, we really need to understand what are we doing in terms of optimization, right? And then do an assessment, which is on the step 2 on the as-is process. Okay, so you need to agree first. Okay, this is the scope. This is the process. How many steps there are? If there are 15, there are 20, we need to define that first, the as-is. On the step 3, we need to talk about how is the new to-be process, the future state is going to look like. You need to actually make sure you spend time to optimize it, like I mentioned earlier, before you do the automation work. Then you need to do step 4 is to engage with the stakeholders to say that, hey, we've looked at the previous as-is process. This is the to-be. It is how we want it to run. You need to get that engagement. You need to actually get that buy-in from your stakeholder. We're going to spend this amount of resource, this amount of time for us to actually get it done, right? You need to make sure that we're going to do this way. Then step 5, once you've gotten the agreement, then you go and actually execute it, okay? Then once you execute it, then you continue to monitor how that improvement of the optimize and automate has actually bring value to you and your team. Okay, so this is the process that we encourage people to look at. Please do not forget to get the engagement. A lot of people say it's okay, we do it on ourselves, we do it in a few of us without informing the bosses, without informing your other functional team that are working beside you, that you're making changes. It is important when you do a process change, you need to make sure that everybody within the organization is aware that you are doing this change. Okay, this is part of the change management process that you need to undertake. It's very critical that you actually do this, because a lot of time when we actually go and talk to customers and clients, we found that there are certain teams who have made changes, which is very good. They did a very good improvement. However, only people within the team knows about it. The rest of the organization, the other functional team are not aware that, hey, John, where did this come from? Or who did this? Why is the process now changed to this way? This is a bit of disconnect between the teams. Yeah. So I want to highlight this because it's important, because it happens in a lot of organizations in that sense, right? So please, make sure you do spend the time to communicate, to engage with people in that sense. Now, of course, what is the benefit of automation? Now, there is a lot of people talking about automation, and sometimes it's difficult to explain why is it that we want to do automation. Now, as you can see from the slides here, there's a lot of things that can actually help us. Things like increase or improve the availability, that's definitely one. Increase productivity, do more with less. Every year, right? When you go for budgeting, I think now is almost the time in August, September that we present for next year's budget, right? So a lot of people will say, hey, John, we need 2 more FTE, but the bosses say, no, you can't have more people on the team. We have reached the ceiling. So what can you do with the increased workload? You might want to look at automation as a way to help you to streamline some of the work, or even look at cost reduction. This is also what a lot of organization wants to drive, to say that, hey, if it takes half a day to do this process, can we reduce it to 1 hour? That means I can do more in that sense and reduce the cost, right? Increase performance or even reliability. So these are some of the rationales, or should I say the reason why automation should be the way forward. Again, like I said, automation is very, very key, but you need to do optimization first. Now, when you do optimization, you need to do that process improvement itself. This part, like I said, you can't skip. You cannot just ignore it and just, say, never mind, you will just, do the as is. Because like I said, eventually it will still needs to be optimized in order for you to reap the benefit of using automation in that sense. This is super critical. Yeah, I cannot stress enough. Yeah? Because like I said, a lot of time people are not sure how to do that. Do reach out to us. We do have training courses, or we can run workshop to help you to look at how do you do process design, how do you do process improvement in that sense. Like I said, this part is super critical, and automation is here to stay. Yeah? If you look at it, a lot of things that are moving forward in the technology world nowadays, right? A lot of stuff are being automated. You have things like chatbot, you have things like artificial intelligence or machine learning. These are all, in a way, some form of automation at the background itself. Okay, right. So enough of introducing the concept. Next, I'm going to get Mahu to showcase a little bit on these request management, and also perhaps a little bit of all the automation features that are actually built into SymphonyAI that is going to be very helpful to you if you are going to make your work more productive, and it's going to streamline everything per se. Mahu, can I just hand over to you, please? Thank you.
Yes, John. Okay, I have shared my screen again.
Yep.
And we are going to touch upon the topics on service request, how those are handled, and the automation touch on top of it.
No, we can get this kind of data, but we have to know what are the activities.
All right. So we have earlier seen how the user and the team is working on the tool following the incident management process. Now we are going to focus on how they are going to work on the service request and the automation areas. Now, coming back to the same dashboard, the end user dashboard, we have an option to submit a request. Now, either I can again search for something under Smart Search to look for some related requests, which I can raise using the service catalogs that have been created and published for the users, or something under Submit Request. So when I go in Submit Request, I can see different type of services that have been published by the team, by our respective organizations, by our respective departments. So from the IT perspective, if I focus on, these are some sample services that they are offering to their employee, something to do with access requests, something to do with the network connect, something around software installations, or there could be something around, something on work from home, then what all services you need, what all help you need or support you need from the IT team to set up that infra for you, to give you the necessary applications and the accesses so you can work from home. So there could be different type of services depending on the organization to organization. Now, as we click on any of these service categories, there could be multiple catalogs under it. Now, for example, if I click on software, within software, there could be different software categories. And depending on what licenses the organizations have purchased, these can be configured. Now, I want something from Adobe catalog, then I click on it and I get the further detailings on the catalogs under Adobe catalog. Here I can click one, it takes me to the request form. And as a user, I can just go ahead and fill up the form that, okay, I want these many licenses. And this is again part of configuration. You want to add more fields over here in the request form. It can be easily done with a codeless configuration available. So without coding, you can add new custom fields and the related workflow on top of it. So who is going to approve it if someone has been requesting something, and based on their department, based on their user role, the user grade, these workflows and things can be configured. You can define in the system if something is pre-approved for certain users. So probably as part of my role, I am entitled to have a mobile phone from the organization. So when I'm going ahead and requesting that mobile phone device, it is not going to follow the approval process because it is pre-approved for my role, right? So those kind of entitlements can be configured, and I can see what all things am I entitled for, and then I can go ahead and log the request accordingly. Now, once the user logs in, they can create all these, they can fill up the form and log their request by searching the right set of catalog based on what type of request that they're coming with. Otherwise, alternatively, again, they can go back to the AI-powered digital agent, and from here they can initiate the conversation again that, okay, hey, I need an access to a shared folder, for example. And okay, based on this, it will initiate the right flow. So I would like to log a request, and it will ask me some details to be ready with some details that it will be needing to go ahead with that. And okay, I will select the respective department and for which department folder you want to access, which particular path you want to access that has been configured as a shared path in that folder. So I want something from brochures, for example. I'll say continue. And based on all these conversations happening here, I can take the conversation ahead and go for that request. Access to shared folder. Right, so I will do all these conversations over here. You can define how's the dialog flow, what is the service request to be picked. Those picking the right set of catalogs and the flows will be done by the digital agent herself. There's no need to do any manual intervention in this entire process. So as I mentioned, I will be selecting the right set of department folder in which I want the access. I will choose the path for which I want the access. And once that's been given, It will ask what type of access you want. Okay, I just want read access. I don't have to anything to write there. And after all the necessary mandatory information is captured from the user, it's going to help me to create the service request on my behalf, right? And once done, it will give me the link and give me the ID number that, okay, this is your request ID number, and it is expected to be solved by this date and time based on the priority attached to it, which is linked to your SLAs. And it will tell me when is it expected to be resolved. Now, in this entire process, I do not have to go into different catalogs if I don't, there's no need. I can just still do my simple conversations here and get the request raised. I can click on this link provided here to look at the further detailings on if there is any approval workflow, then what is the stage, which team is going to work on it. What if you want additional information to be provided, you can do it either from the chat interface or from this detail page interface for your user side as well. Right? You can provide additional information or attachment. You can see which technician has been assigned to it. If you want to do a chat, you can do that. What is the deadline? What is your service window on this? And other related informations which I can see here to take a printout, closing, cancel, manual escalation. So there was some areas that John was explaining earlier in his slides, that there's escalation process that can be configured as well. So there could be two types of escalations that can be configured in the system, your auto escalation and manual escalation. So auto one, we will just define the conditions in what areas, in what conditions the auto escalation mails should be triggered to the respective stakeholders, and that will be handled by the system. Manual is like this, where I can, as a user, I can just go and click on manual escalation, and based on what level is enabled for this, I can choose that and then take it forward to manually escalate further, right? Now, this is from the user standpoint, how the user can do the interactions and get the things done. Now, assuming the same scenario that this request has been created, it has been logged, and there is an approval workflow map to it. Now, based on that workflow, once approved, this access can be automatically provided by the system as part of automation. Now that's called service automation, wherein I can have multiple service automation scripts that can be configured in the system based on different scenarios, and there could be different ways of handling the approval workflows in the system. Now, if I just give a quick glimpse on that, this is your workflow designers in which you define how the approval workflow should be done in the system. If you want some approvals to be configured in multiple ways, then you select who is going to approve it at this stage and save it, and you will just simply do rejoin the connectors and submit it. So your one level of approval is modified to two levels of approval. You want some conditions, some notifications to be involved. You can do that as part of workflow designer configuration. And when we talk about automation, there could be multiple automations that can be done linked to those requests coming in from the user. Now, if someone is asking for some access right, like shared access, right? That's coming under access right management. So this is my automation configuration screen where I can know how many under this category, how many executions have happened, how many were success, how many were failure. You want to know further details on this, how many flows are configured under this. I click on it and I get further details that, okay, within access, these are different automations that have been configured under that. Now, under this, you want some specific information to be looked at for a particular flow. You click on that and you get the flow of that particular automation as well. So you know when to begin, what is the next first automation script to be executed, and based on success or failure, what is the next point of action, and so on till the end of that workflow. So there could be multiple types of scripts, automation scripts that can be configured. So from the user's experience standpoint, when the user is requesting something and it is approved automatically those solutions or those requests can be fulfilled. Those solutions can be provided without any manual intervention. Now, how it helps? It gives a faster resolution to the users, so they have a quick turnaround time. They will know how quickly they can resolve or get the request fulfilled. Plus, your engineers who are doing all these tasks repetitively today can focus on something more productive. And these repetitive tasks can be handed over to the system to handle it in the automation area. So there could be multiple scenarios, like someone joins the organization. So there's an employee onboarding and offboarding process. So when onboarding happens, IT team has multiple jobs to do. They create the email IDs, they give access to the right application, install the right set of software. Someone coming as a guest in the organization, they have to access guest Wi-Fi. So all these things can be manually, which are manually being done today, can be automatically done with the help of service automation layer and the request management together. So the engineers need not to, do all these things manual way. They can focus something more productive, something which they need to, their attention is more required. And these things can be handed over to the respective automation layers to handle it effectively and provide the faster resolutions, right? And if I come back to the analyst role, it's kind of same. So I won't spend more time there. If I go back to my analyst dashboard, okay, it's timed out. Let me just quickly log in back. So when I log in here and I land on my respective dashboard, as I showcased earlier, that there are different types of tiles that I see here. So last time we went into incident. This time, if I go into service request, concept-wise, it will be the same. I can see the open incidents assigned to me. What are different work groups, how they're opened by the work groups, how they're open for the ones which are assigned to me. And I can click on it to get to further details of those tickets. And if I'll just go in one to show you, more or less, it's the same screen what we saw for the incident with slight differences. So if I'll just open one SR ID now, instead of incident ID earlier, so you can see there is a segregation in the way the ID is getting generated here. So I can differentiate with the ID, looking at the ID itself, that is it incident or is it service request? I can see the details, basic details as filled by the user. All the tabs are same as we saw for the incident. So I can again do the communication, checklist, relationship against this particular service request on which I'm working on. And here I can see, so this is the minor information change. So instead of other detailings, I can know the catalog details, that what catalog was filled in by the user, who approved it. And after that, it is coming to me. What form was filled in by the user. So I can see that information over here. Then I can, again, for this one as well, I can see the change history, knowledge transfer, your sending email, audit flow. Now there are different communications happening so that you can have a communication history. So, and you can filter it by different types of communication happening in the system. So how many user communications happened, how many approval informations were sent out, private logging, system generated mails, chat history, all the mails which were sent using this function of send email. So everything coming under same screen of communication history where you can define all this thing. Setting up a reminder, exporting things to PDF, and converting this to incident. So supposedly user by mistake logged a request, but ideally it's interruption in the service. It's not a request. It should be done under incident management. So I can convert this back to incident. And in incident also, I have an option to convert those incidents to service requests. Supposedly customer or the user, they log in incident saying, I need access, I need software to be installed, which ideally should be followed under service request workflow. So I can convert these tickets from incident to service request and service request to incident, right? And this is your incident management, your service request and incident management flows that we have covered so far on the demonstration. Now, if I'll just touch a couple of more screens before I wrap it up on this topic, there are different types of scripts that you can configure over here, right? And each can be addressing to different scenarios. There are different languages that we support. As you see here, there could be some scripts that you're writing for automation, something under PowerShell script, something on Python. There could be some other languages, like you see on the top, PowerShell, Python, Shell. So I can see all this. If you are creating a new script, you can click on Add. You can define what language you want to use, DOS, Perl, Python, Shell, VB script, the theme that you want to use where you are writing the code for your reference, and the other details on when to execute, what is the input, what should be the output, how's the criteria to be passed. So those configurations on the script level is what we configure over here, which ultimately gets configured under workflows that we design. And then we can quickly have a look at the automation dashboard, that what is the overall status, how many scripts we have, how many executions we have with the success and failure comparisons, different types. What are top 5 automations I'm doing, or top 5 workflows executions I'm doing. So those things are top 5 categories in which I'm doing the automation. Those things can be all quickly tracked using the dashboard over here. Right. So I think this is it for the respective service request management, along with the automation glimpses, how things are happening on the tool layer.
Thanks, Mahu, for that. We do have some question in the chat for this section, Mahu. So I think we should actually address them very quickly. This one question from Nuru is asking the script that is available on which version of the SymphonyAI that we have. Could you take that question, Mahu? The scripting feature itself. Yeah.
The feature itself is there on all the versions that we have. Multiple versions. Starting the last version is Tahoe, the one we are using, Tahoe version, and Tahoe. Then Elbrus is there, and then there's new version coming up. So this feature of service automation has been there for some time. It's not something new.
It's not new, right?
Yeah. So it's been there. So I think based on the license purchase, obviously the latest version will be deployed in service automation. Once you are subscribing to the licenses for service automation, it can be enabled and configured on the same platform.
Right. So I think because Nuru is asking this because I think she's interested perhaps to understand if she were to engage to actually have which version is it that has this scripting.
Yeah.
There's another also. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Madhu. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that obviously whenever we get the new license subscription request, so whichever version is the latest version will be deployed and configured for the customer.
Okay, Nuru, I hope that answer your question. So like Mahu was saying, it's actually available in all the version, even with the latest one, as in the current one as well. There is also another question from Fatin. Actually, there's two questions. Fatin is asking about the effort being recorded for each of the ticket. How could she seize that?
Right, so that is done in a way like we have something called effort estimation. Okay, so in the respective tickets we are working on, we can enable this clock over here for efforts. So either it can be a start and stop watch, where I can just click on start and then start working on the system on this ticket. And once done, I can click on stop and it will capture how many minutes, hours, or days I have spent on this to capture the effort from the engineer standpoint. And second is I can manually key in the information. If there is no start stop button, I can put manually how many days, hours, or minutes I have given to this particular ticket. That's another way. So it's part of configuration, which one you want to enable in the application, and then capture the respective efforts that you want to record for the respective engineers who have given their time. And under change history, you will have all the information available with you. There are different sections over here. So here you can see effort history. So if the efforts have been filled in by the engineer, so you can know how many efforts have been given, how much time has been given, along with the total at the end. And if there are multiple teams involved, then how much time each team has taken for while working on that particular ticket. So that gives you the history of all the evaluations and efforts given by the respective people, in addition to the SLAs that we are tracking anyways.
Right. I think that's very clear because there was another question follow-up on that was asking, is there something that the agent needs to click, which we've actually went through as a Mahu? That means the agent can actually click the start and stop clock in that sense, right? Yeah. Thank you for that, Mahu. Fatin, I hope that answers your question. So like Mahu has demonstrated on the screen, the feature, right? You can actually start and stop, or you can actually then run through or let the engineer fill in. I think this part, it really depends on your organization. When we so-called do the engagement during the configuration stage, like Mahu mentioned, right? We need to get your feedback to say, okay, what is your practice currently in your organization, or do you want to enable both in that sense, which is a right fit on how your team members or the engineering team actually do this in that sense. So I hope that's very clear in that sense. Fatin, Nuru, I think you're okay with the question as well, right? So thanks for that questions. Okay, so we will continue with the presentation if there are no more questions in that sense. Everybody good? Right. So we've just went through the what we call the discussion on the request management as well as automation. So I think you guys have actually had a glimpse of the fantastic features that is actually in SymphonyAI. There's a lot of scripting available that you can actually do workflow. Actually, workflow, I must say, is actually a very powerful tool to help you to make things run smoother and faster, especially the automatic one, okay, that Mahu has actually shown briefly. Right, the next topic we want to actually touch on is this thing called the Service Level Management Practice, SLM. Now, when you have a ITSM system in place or a practice, you want to report the performance of how we are doing per se. Now, this is actually important because it's actually our report card, yeah? So typically, it's actually on a monthly basis that you report this to the management, to the user community, or to the business per se to say that, hey, how are we doing? So you want to actually measure that. So what is an SLA? We call it the Service Level Agreement. We are actually measuring the individual aspect of the service that we provide when we do service management, right? So we have to actually define, is it what we call engineering? Is it actually for the end user support? Is it how fast we provision a service or deliver a laptop, or we resolve an incident per se? So all this can be measured in that sense, right? Now, to take it a little bit further, when we have an SLM, we are trying to make sure that we have an agreed view of what the service level should be. What is the expected level that we need to perform? Now, typically in most organizations, you'll be set at 90% attainment, right? Some have set it to be a little bit higher, perhaps 95 or 96. Then we actually have to collect the data. We have to analyze it. We have to actually present it at the monthly discussion or meeting to actually show that where are we in that sense. Now, with the SLM, it also indicates there are what we call areas of improvement that we can do on what we are doing per se. If we have failed in certain area, those are the opportunity window where we can look back and say, okay, we didn't do so well on restoring the service of this server, for example. Okay, how could we do it better the next time? How can we actually ensure that we better support the business to continue their service in the business transaction per se? Now, in the next slide here, I just want to briefly just highlight a couple of things here. As you can see at the top of the slides here, we have the traditional SLA or SLM management, whereby we have agreed with the end user on the right-hand side here that we will achieve a 90% attainment. So that's very typical, yeah? Most organizations will pick about 90. Now, if you have chosen a slightly lower one, it is not wrong. but you might want to slowly increase that to 90. Now, there are organizations that we consult with, they say, John, we're at 95. Should we increase it higher? The question will be, does the business needs higher? So those are the questions that need to be discussed. Yeah, not necessarily higher is better. Yeah, because the higher SLA means we need to put in more resources, more tools, more processes to ensure that we meet that higher standard in that sense. Okay, so please be aware of that. Now, lower doesn't mean it is also wrong if the business is acceptable that we are performing at that level. So again, it all depends on what your organization require. But 90% in a general rule of thumb, that's what it is. Now, if I work backwards, you have an SLA, which is an agreement between us as a service provider with the internal end user or your customer per se. Now, if you work backwards, you will have what we call an operations level agreement. Typically, it's slightly tighter. It's 85% attainment in that sense. So if you know that if you're not hitting it, then it's going to be an issue. Now, I want to introduce the other one, which is actually what we call the SLA, SLO, SLI. This is actually another way of looking at it from the engineering perspective. You set a different metrics to say that this is something that you want to measure in that sense. Okay, so again, this we're going to leave it very quickly because I just want to make sure highlight that there are ways that you can actually do that. The more important one to look at is actually what we call a watermelon SLA effect. Now, the watermelon SLA effect, it happens when you look at your SLA, it is all green, but the business are still struggling in that sense. Now, the reason for that is you may have actually fall between the cracks. Remember when we mentioned that if you have a 90% attainment and you have a 10% failure rate, now that 10% failure rate could have affected a specific business function per se, which is absolutely critical. Now, this is actually important in that sense that you need to look at it to say that, okay, how could we actually make amendment or, so if I said changes into the SLA in order to support that. I'll give you an example. Yeah, say if your SLA is 90%, and when you go back to the business, they say, look, John, I know you hit 90%. It's green, the SLA is green, but we're still not happy. And we said, why? Oh, remember 2 weeks ago, you have a failure. Then we say, yeah, that's within the 10%, right? That was acceptable. Yes, unfortunately, that has impacted our month-end closing processing, for example. Now, that will be classified as a watermelon SLA. Why? Because during that one day where you have an outage of the SAP reporting server, for example, we were unable to close it. It was mission critical for the business, despite the fact that we say 90% is acceptable, but it has actually caused an impact to the finance department, for example. Now, this is where you need to look at it, what we call holistically, to say that, okay, if this has actually impacted the system, even though we say that we've met the 90% SLA, it's actually red, just like a watermelon when we cut open it, right? So this is actually quite an important thing to look at to say that, yes, we are green. What does green mean to the business? Is it okay? Is it acceptable? Is it something that the business is so-called able to function with that 90% or not? Now, again, you don't necessarily have to increase the SLA if it's 90% in that sense. You might want to look at a revised SLA to say that during that last week of the critical business operation, we might want to define that as something that we need to make sure that we are ensuring a higher SLA for that 1 week of the month-end closing. Okay, so this is something that I think you need to be conscious of when you manage the SLA. Don't be complacent to say that, yes, we are green, we are all clear. There may be other areas of improvement if you engage with the business to say that, hey, this is something that we need to improve. This is something that we need to actually fine tune to make sure that we can actually do a little bit better in that sense. Okay, so just be conscious of that. When your SLA is green, doesn't mean that it is good. Yeah, so you need to investigate that allowance of the so-called acceptance that is there, whether that is something that the business are still okay, acceptable, that they can still run the business properly in that sense. Okay. Sorry, there was a question? No? Okay. Right. So with that, I'm going to get Mahu to quickly demonstrate the SLM reporting feature in that sense. Mahu, could I pass it over to you, please?
Yes, John. Let me share my screen back. All right. So let me come back to the same screen on incident record that we saw some time back. And we are going to touch upon the SLAs now. Sorry, any questions? Now, we had, we had seen this screen earlier, how the incident detail record is looking like. And we had something called SLA calculations over here. Now, we talked about the priority earlier. Now, based on the priority mapping, why priority is important? Because your SLAs are linked to your priority. Now, priority, we have known how it works, how it can be applied to the respective type of tickets, your incident, your requests. And based on that priority map to it, the SLAs are going to be mapped as well. Now, there are different ways of SLAs calculation. One is your response SLA and one is your resolution SLA. We capture both. So you can know that how quickly the response has to be given and how quickly the resolution has to be given and what are the deadlines based on the priority map to it. Now we know what is the log time, what is the log date and time. Based on that, the priority mapping is done and we will know what is the deadline for the response and resolution SLAs. And when we are actually responding and when we are actually providing the solution, it will again capture the timeline over here, the timestamp, and let us know what is the actual timestamp when the response was given and was it done within the deadline. Then it will show violation as no. If in case it is breaching, then it will say violation as yes, with the mandatory reason to be provided. So for example, I move it to resolve, for example. So when I move it to resolve, then at that point in time, it will capture the timestamp here for actual and tell me against comparing it with the deadline over here that am I violating the SLA? Yes. And without giving any mandatory justification that why it got breached, I will not be able to go ahead and resolve or close this particular incident. So it is mandatory for the engineers or the technicians to provide the violation reason over here while providing the solution. If something is, some SLAs are breaching at their end. Now SLA, along with SLA, your service level agreements, there is something called operational level agreements as well, which is under SLA, we have OLA. And those OLAs are used when we are doing any tasks distribution in form of work orders. That's where your respective detailings on your OLA is going to be reflected over here. So we will know that overall, for example, you have 6 hours of SLA that you have to provide the solution within 6 hours. But internally, there are 2 teams who will be working on it. So probably I'll give 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours to each to resolve their part. So I can provide the overall solution within the SLA. And that's how your operational level agreements will be tracked, mapped to your internal teams when we are distributing the tasks among the different team members. Now here we can know what under OLA details that what is the source work group, what is the target work group who will be working on it, what is the type, and the time taken. Are we meeting the OLA time there? That I know. So if in case any of the SLAs are breaching in any scenarios, and the OLA is also configured there, so we will know exactly which team did the resolution within the time, or which is the team responsible to which caused this breach to happen on the overall SLA level, because they were not able to resolve things under their area of ownership or the scope on which they need to work and provide the solution in time. So those tracking backs and seeing how these things will be affecting the SLAs is where the OLA comes into picture to keep a track on your distributed tasks, which I'm handling through the relationship. So if I'm doing a work order creation here, so automatically with that work order, the OLA is going to be mapped. Now this is SLA, one is OLA. And then there is something called underpinning contract, which you sign with your external vendors. Now what happens, you have some vendors as well involved. So with that, with those vendors involved, there will be some underpinning contracts as well that you have signed. You can upload your entire vendor master over here. So which vendor you are including and with which vendor, what is your underpinning contract, which has all the terms of the SLAs as well. That what is the agreement between on the service level standpoint that has to be followed. And once the vendor is giving us all the information, we will be matching it along with the contract, underpinning contract details, which have been configured in the system, which will tell me whether a particular vendor is responding within their SLA time or they are violating the SLA time while they are providing solutions back to us as an external vendor supporting me on this particular incident. And that's where these underpinning contracts are going to be looked at. Now, based on all these SLAs, whether it's a response SLA, your resolution SLA, it all comes and or different type of categorizations, prioritizations, which I'm doing, everything boils down to your reports and dashboards. So ultimately, the teams wants to know, the management wants to know, how many priority tickets do we have? What's the SLA going on? Because many of the cases, SLAs will be attached to the costs. That there could be some penalties, there could be some other, commercial angles to the SLAs, which are tagged to the respective services, the incidents or the requests that we are working on. So this becomes very critical for the people to maintain the SLAs and the reporting around it. And there are a lot of reports that you get along with the reporting section over here. So we have a report section where you can define different type of modules that have been enabled. And in each, like incident management, service request. And when I click on incident management, I will see the list of all the reports which are available under incident management. I can have a separate dashboard view within incident, which is dedicatedly giving me the details around my incidents happening. And here's the sample dashboard that tells me the SLA summarization, the first report. I can see the graphical one. I can export it if needed, or I can export to Excel, and I can expand it to view more data in a tabular format like this. So what I'm seeing here in a graphical format is what I'm seeing below in a tabular form. And again, all these graphs, the charts, the numbers, these are drilling capable up to the ticket level. So for example, I see that on the low priority, there are 3 where I met the SLA. I want to know further details on it. I click on it, and I will see the list of those many incidents. Now this list I can export to Excel. I can just analyze from the same screen by scrolling to the right, or I can explore further details by clicking on the incident ID from the report itself, which will give me a read-only view for the same detail that I showed in the incident detail page. So I can see similar set of tabs over here, but all in read-only format because it's a report from where I'm fetching this information. I can see what communications were sent out, if any, what changes were done in this entire incident. What is the flow for this entire incident? Any vendor involved or not, I can check it out from here. Any other relationships I have? What was the solution provided? If any automation was run, that what was the output of that? So I can know that under orchestration, this is the scripts which were run, and this is the flow which was used over here. And when was it created or completed? I want to know further details on this view. I can click on this view, which will redirect me back to the view of that particular flow. So from the report itself, from the dashboard itself, you can go up to the ticket level detailings or the flow level detailings, to know further details when you do any analysis on a particular report. You can see how many incidents are currently open by priority, how many are, what's a summary on your work group, so the different teams, how's their SLA, how many incidents are open by the respective teams, by the respective work groups. And in case there are different groups I have created or different departments I have created, then what is the number of total incidents there? I want to know the details based on the category, for example. I can probably say I want to know category-wise incidents I want to look at. So I know how many tickets were incidents were logged on communication app, how many on server, network, inventory, backup, and so on. So these are top 10 categories which I'm seeing over here. You can do it by top 10, top 25, top 15, and based on that, the respective reports can be filtered out accordingly. You click on this, you get the further details of those many. So within this, what are the child categories? These are the ones. So under communication apps, how many are from Outlook? How many are from instant messaging clients? You want to know further details on one of them? You get the click on the bar and you get the list of those many incidents. And again, you can get to the ticket level. From SLA standpoint, again, there are multiple reports that you get, like an SLA trending report, your SLA vendor report. By analysts, you want to track who is performing how much. So I know that how many incidents are handled by the respective engineers in different priorities, how many missed or met from the SLA percentage. I click on these respective hyperlinks and I get to the list of those many tickets again to further analyze that. Right now, on top of the multiple out-of-box reports, as I mentioned earlier, like this is one executive dashboard. So I know what's your overall overview for the incident and service request standpoint. So how many open incidents, your SLA compliance for current month or current year, or what is the breach percentage for the current month? What is the mean time to resolve, right? And you want some trending reports, you want some CSAT analysis report. So these are different reportings that you can look at, which are available out of the box. Now, in addition to this, we also have a BI engine as part of our platform, which can be used to handle any custom report requirements. You have any custom reports or dashboards to be created, you can use the BI engine to create new set of reports in your own format. Like you want a particular CIO dashboard or CEO dashboard, and these are the top 10 reports I want to be included in that particular unified view for my CIO. I can easily do that by using the BI engine. Right, so those are things, plus you can schedule these reports. So some certain reports you want, to be sent out to certain stakeholders on a periodic basis. Like I want this particular report every Monday morning or every Friday evening. It's a monthly report or a weekly report. That's all part of the scheduler configuration, how and what reports you want to be sent out over email. Right. So that's a quick glimpse on the reporting and the SLA configurations. There could be multiple ways of handling these configurations on the SLAs, as I mentioned earlier, like your service level, your operational level, underpinning contracts, and the quality that you want to maintain for the respective SLAs. And these gets mapped with your incident when we work on it. So just to give a quick glimpse on this part. So here you define your priorities, as I mentioned, and the respective SLAs that is to be followed on that. Right? And it gives you better understanding to the engineers beforehand as well. If I come back to the analyst dashboard, this will tell them what is your response and resolution SLA performance at the moment from both incident and service request standpoint. What are the areas you have met or not met the SLA, it will highlight the green and red color ring like this. Or it will also tell you what are the areas where you are about to miss the SLA. So probably the time is near on those areas where I'm near the breach time. So probably I can focus on those areas as well first to save my SLA as an engineer. Right, so it will also in a RAG format, red, amber, green, or yellow, or green. I can know what are how close am I to the breaching of SLA. Right, so I think this is it from my end on the demonstration side for the SLA, how we are calculating it, how we are configuring it, and tracking it from the reporting standpoint. Back to you, John.
Yep. Thanks, Mahu. I think the reporting is actually very, very rich, I must say, as compared to some of the products in the market. One thing to note, just to share with everybody, right? Before you go and customize the report, if you can remember seeing where Mahu has actually demonstrated, there is a lot of standard out-of-the-box report that you might want to explore first before customizing your own report. I know every organization that we talk to, they say, hey, John, we have this special requirement. We want to do it this way, that way. Actually, you need to look at the standard report, see if that fits your requirement or not. Again, we're not against people doing what we call customized report, but what we're saying is it will be more efficient, more productive if you look at the standard out-of-box report in that sense. And also the feature that Mahu mentioned, whereby there's a scheduling of sending reports across, or even a real-time tracking of those reports from a tactical perspective. So those are very, very important features that you should seriously look at, how you can enable the various stakeholders, right, are aware of what is happening within your ITSM environment. That's very key. So thank you, Mahu, for that. We don't have any questions for this section, so I'm going to move on to the last part of the presentation on the next steps. So where do we go from here? Now, typically, when you do an IT service management implementation, there's a whole roadmap. So what I've just put on screen is to just show everybody briefly, there are multiple dimensions of a IT service management that you need to consider when we actually implement this. Again, if you do engage us as Cybin to come in together with SymphonyAI, we will be able to look at this holistically to see how we can actually help you and your team to actually look at how do you successfully run an ITSM per se. Right now, there are benefits, of course, as you can see, right? Then we will talk about a lot, right? Whereby we optimize the process. We actually make sure that you can actually have standardization of the work that you do, the operating procedures, how you actually do justification of the managing the cost and the quality and the speed which you deliver to your organization. These are very, very important, and also having a proper documentation that is auditable from a governance perspective. That is absolutely key as well in today's world, because you can't be doing things without not answerable to what we call governance in that sense, right? Because we have bound by external rules, things like PDPA and all that stuff, right? We need to make sure that all these things are properly managed. Now, how could Cybin help you? So basically, we actually do a couple of things that we believe from the ITSM perspective that will be beneficial to you. Do engage it if you need to. So we can do what we call a ITSM assessment per se, to help you understand where you are in terms of the maturity. We do have assessment tool on that. We can also assist to do what we call process design, aligned to best practices in that sense, to make sure that the process that you are running in your organizations are actually working for you and aligned to the best practice. Of course, we do conduct ITIL training. We have a series of training from the foundation to the specialist to the master track of self itself on ITIL training itself. We also do ISO 20000 assessment. This is for service management perspective. So if you are an organization, you want to ensure that you live up to an international standard, which is the 20000 on service management. This will be something that will give you a way forward as to how you actually do it. We also, of course, provide staffing if you do need temporary resources or long-term support management in that sense. Okay, just to note, Cybin is actually the only one that is fully accredited as an ITIL trainer and partner in Malaysia itself by PeopleCert, right? All right, so we're on to the Q&A session. Let me just quickly check. I believe there was a question earlier. This is from Cheryl. Cheryl was asking, can the system be integrated into the existing authentication? I think Cheryl is referring to things that are used by the organization, right? So we're looking at a cloud Active Directory, an LDAP of sort, or even a cloud open LDAP. Mahu, could you take that question on the SymphonyAI ability to integrate to a authentication system per se?
Yes, we can do that. We support all the standard integrations with the existing applications or authentication methods that the organization is using. So there is no challenge, not just the authentication method. In case you want us to integrate with any other third-party tool that you are using today, be it your other ERP system or monitoring system, we will be able to integrate with those applications using the REST APIs to communicate based on your scenarios, like what information you want to push or pull. So we can discuss those things in detail, but on a high level, yes, that's doable to integrate with your existing systems.
So I presume, Mahu, just a follow-up on that, right? Single sign-on shouldn't be an issue as well, right? Because once we authenticate through the LDAP and per se, it will be very, very seamless for the organization user for a single sign-on, I presume?
Correct.
Yeah, right. I hope that helps, Shahrul, to answer your question. So actually, the reason why we actually chose to work with SymphonyAI, because it's actually very holistic in a lot of the area, even the processes that is actually you've seen earlier on some of the modules that we demonstrated from Mahu, right? Things like incident management, request management, which is even the service level management, right? It actually complies to the ITIL 4 standards as well. So that's something that you shouldn't be worried, or should I say, you should take into consideration when you choose a system, right? You should make sure that it also comply to ITIL 4 in that sense. So you actually are using what we call the best practice in the industry per se. Right. Is there any other question? Thank you for that, Shahrul, for that question. Is there any question? I don't see any at this point in time. Anybody in the chat has any more questions? We still have a few minutes before we close the session. Yes? No? Come on, guys, don't be shy. Jangan malu kucing kalau ada soalan, ya. If anybody has any question, yes.
Hi, Siva here. I seem not to able to put a question in the chat box. So just my question to Madhu is, how ITSM is working versus the DevOps that is gaining traction now in the companies?
Mahu, you want to talk a little bit more on DevOps, on how that actually works within the SymphonyAI environment? How could we actually perhaps complement that?
Sorry, can you ask the question again?
Sorry, Siva was interested to know, because I think his asked question is referring to DevOps. How would the system, SymphonyAI, actually so-called support that in that sense, DevOps?
Okay,
am I correct, Siva? Yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah,
we currently, so DevOps and AIOps is something which is part of our roadmap, wherein, these intelligence we are going to be, enhancing far more from the current beta versions which are available at the moment. So we are just waiting for the right, set of a roadmap that is to be achieved from the AIOps or DevOps standpoint. But we do have the integration capabilities, where in past we have, if customer is using some other DevOps tools or other AIOps tools, then we have looked at handling those things in the integration manner, how we can do the integration with those tools and then handle the respective scenarios when we are working on change management, then how it has to be, handled, your change in release management to be integrated with the DevOps tool. So it can be, in an automated manner, how we can handle those releases and changes planning in in alignment to your processes that you're configuring in the service management module. So that's how we are handling it right now, but we do not have our own DevOps module or AIOps module at the moment.
Right. Siva, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, it's answered. Thanks.
Yeah. So basically, if I understand from Mahu, the way that we're handling, we do have connectors of sort. Is there a specific tool, Siva, that you are concerned of from the DevOps side that we should be perhaps preparing for it?
No, so, I'm asking this on our B2B customers as well, because some of them are actually asking about DevOps. So, and two of them are actually moving away from ITSM to DevOps. So that's why we need to see how those things could.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but I still think there is a value, Siva, to look at perhaps having a connector from those CI/CD pipeline, whatnot, for the tools that you use in DevOps, right? Like Mahu mentioned, to have that connected to the ITSM, because I think the tracking under one single pane of glass, one single system, would provide more value from an organization perspective. Again, like I said, we want to support DevOps. That's very, very key in that sense. Like Mahu mentioned, AIOps is another one that is actually gaining a lot of traction nowadays. For those of us who are not familiar with AIOps is actually tracking the application performance itself, that we recommend that you actually also have that interconnected to the ITSM. Just like when you talk about security, right? People talk about SIEM as a module, and normally when we do consulting with clients, we say, hey, please have that connected to the ITSM system as well, so that you can actually track that in that sense. So Siva, I understand your question. Again, the guidance that we want to give is that please have that integrated if possible. Not to say move away, because I think it's just a matter of having an API call or a ready connector that will help you to do that. Thanks for the question, Siva. I hope that helps.
I do agree with what Badu and you saying, actually, because customers are just using this jargon and they don't understand DevOps in totality. So ITSM is here to stay. It's not either or. It has to be coexist, because many organizations, especially in Malaysia, are not transitioning to at least DevOps. ITSM is the low-hanging fruit they need to pluck before they move into other things. Yeah. Thanks.
Agree. And a lot of time people do ask this question. They say, but ITSM has been around. Should we get rid of it or replace it with something else like Agile and all that, right? My recommendation is no. It's like you said, Siva, it's actually the fundamental building blocks of an operation or an organization, right? It's actually at the fundamental part. You need to get it right in order to actually deliver value to your external customer or even your internal end user. That is absolutely right. In that sense. Any other questions from the floor that we can take? I think we can still perhaps take one. I know we are slightly over time. If there's one question, we can actually take them. Anybody has any more question? No? Okay. So if there is no more question, sorry, there's one question from Nurul. May I know the recorded meeting will be shared through which platform? Nurul, we will be sharing it on YouTube, that's for sure, in that sense, or you can actually check it out from our website, Cybin itself. We will definitely do that. I'm actually sharing my email address in the chat. So if anybody would like to have a post so-called meeting here to have a quick consultation of a quick 15 minutes or 20 minutes discussion, do drop me an email. I'll be happy to come online to do a quick discussion with you so that we can actually talk a little bit more specific. I think like the Siva's question, right, of how we actually do it, we can definitely do that as well. Okay, right. With that, we thank you to every one of you who have actually joined our session today. I hope it has been helpful in that sense to help you to understand some of the core concepts that we talk about. And also you had a glimpse of the SymphonyAI features, which is something that we know is going to be very helpful if you do consider to take on and use this platform per se. Again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mahu, for helping me with the demonstration of the system. We hope to see you all again in our upcoming other series of training. that we can actually bring more value to you in that sense. Again, thank you everybody for your time, and we really, really appreciate your presence on this session itself. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good day ahead.
Yep, have a good day. Yeah, thank you. And those going for your Friday prayer have a good one. Selamat solat Jumaat ya. Terima kasih.